Welcome to Follow Your Joy podcast, where intuition is the doorway to your wisdom, your genius, and your joy. I'm your host, Marla Diane, and I've been transforming creative entrepreneurs' lives for over 26 years. Through 2 businesses as a success coach and a business strategist, and prior to that, an entertainment publicist and a talent manager for 2 decades. It's time to make joy your inner GPS for life and business decisions rather than lean on your logic and reason first. You'll not only be following what is most authentic to you and for you, but you will live the beautiful life that's meant just for you. You'll come to learn that following your joy is a life and a business strategy. Listen in for inspiring entrepreneurial stories and solocasts that illuminate how by trusting your intuition, you'll create a fulfilling result. Want to learn how to access, trust, or up-level your intuition? Join me in the conversation to find out how. Well, hi everybody. This is the first time I've had a husband and wife team. How cool is that? On the podcast. And I know you'll find them intriguing and entertaining. But before I go into introducing this dynamic duo, let's talk about the reality of success. And what I mean is achieving success in any area of your life is not all roses, right? At times it's hard, emotionally, mentally, right? Financially, and could be physically. And I share this because I want to be transparent, as a success coach, that although my role in my clients' lives is to be obviously positive and future focused and supportive and holding a space for personal and professional growth, especially my entrepreneurs, is that, let's be honest, success can be hard. Or we have moments of, wanting to quit, right? But as long as we have the belief, and here's my point, as long as we have the belief where we're capable, and we know we are capable of achieving our goals and desires, and that rejection, failure, pivoting, evaluation, measuring results, and change are all part of the path of success. And we accept that the hard times then won't seem so monumental, right? Because I think and I've been very guilty of this, early on, is that I was a little too positive, meaning I was not accepting the fact that, it's going to be hard sometimes. Now, obviously having 2 businesses over the last, 27 years, it's still, it was challenging for me to mature into that. And it was probably, I want to say that happened about my 2nd or 3rd year into my coaching business, that while I was being coached, by my mentors. So I've been there, done that, right? I understand it. So do you use universal, law principles and mindset, to help achieve your goals, and my goals? Yeah, 100%. Right. However, we must be, and I'm still on the topic of success, is that we must have alignment in our thoughts and feelings. In other words, the energetic vibration, that's all part of that, the universal law principles, and have that with the goal in mind that you want to achieve, right? Which means holding, right, in your thoughts, in your feelings, in your imagination, as if it's already complete. It's no different than an athlete. How many times do they see themselves winning the game before they even step out on the field, right? How many times, are Olympian athletes coached? They're already won the gold medal before they even get to the Olympics. And that's what I'm talking about, right? So yes, that must be part of the formula. And we must take deliberate actions to create results. It's not just sitting on your couch and hoping and praying and imagining, obviously. So the tangible with the intangible are a must together for success. right? You can also call it mindset and actions. And I've had dozens and dozens of small and mid-sized failures in my 15 years in my coaching business, from launches that only had a few enrollments to webinars that had less than 10 people sign up, when you had a goal of 50, financial goals that were a miss many times. But I stood back, right? And I assessed what happened and just tried again, and then tried another way until I got a success, right? Some of the things I just went, nope, not doing it anymore, right? All right. So I could go on and on this topic, but I really want to get to our guests and their story. And you'll see why this success topic is a good segue to their story. So if you have questions, and this is something new that I want to offer you, is that if you have questions around the success topic, right, or personal growth or money, as you know, I'm an expert in your money relationship, boundaries, business growth, anything, go ahead and send your question to my team at support@marladiane.com, and I'll answer it on a podcast, right? So let's start doing that, right? Send me some questions. I'd love to be able to, answer those. Okay. So let's talk to Brian and Nicole Franklin of Vows and Speeches. So Nicole is the co-founder and director of entertainment, and she oversees all aspects of Vows and Speeches, back-end operations, as well as the sales outreach, while working with Brian on the larger business strategy. And she's had 20 years of advertising and marketing experience, mostly as a media buyer and chief operating officer of a political consulting firm. That's going to be key, the word politics, in this conversation. And as a media buyer, she had bought over $100 million in television, radio, print, and outdoor advertising. It's a pretty large budget. As COO, she managed all administrative and accounting aspects of that business. Whereas Brian, also co-founder of their Vows and Speeches, he oversees all interviews and script writing, right? So prior to forming their wedding industry company, most of Brian's 25 years of work was in writing and advertising as an award-winning political consultant and communications strategist, which of course, includes the almighty speechwriting for then federal and state campaigns. So yeah, they were working in politics in Washington, D.C. And that's one of the, reasons why it intrigued me. And I'll share with you in a moment how I met them. I'm like, I want to hear about this. I want to hear what went on behind the scenes with this political career. And which you will hear from them directly, how they had long been wanting to transition out of politics. All right. So Brian had began to look at businesses that really had an overlap, right, with his experience and their experience and their skill set. And being that speech writing and media training was part of their political work, and what was starting to happen, which again, I'm going to let them tell the whole story, is their friends and family started asking them to help them with their wedding vows, right? And delivering that, So they found that they loved doing it, and the rest is going to be history as soon as you hear about it. Okay. So welcome, Brian and Nicole.
Thank you.
Thanks to you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. So I want to share, Brian and Nicole, I want to share what attracted me to invite you to the podcast. So not only do we share, right, in similar talents and skills in writing and journalism and speech writing and building personal brands, because what you were doing was in politics. I was in the entertainment industry doing that, right? High profile celebrities as well as, visual and performing artists. So that number one is, one of the things that attracted me. But also as we were talking, I'm like, you're a husband and wife team. in business. We need to hear about this, right? We need to hear about how that goes. And also, that I found your niche very unique. I don't think in the 9 years I've been in the wedding industry as a coach, I don't think I've run into anybody that has your specialty, right? So I went, yeah, this is unique. Let's get him on the show, right? Okay, so we met, everybody. We met at it was in February, right? Through WIPA, which is one of the industry associations, and it was in Newport Beach at the beautiful Balboa Bay Resort, and we got introduced and started talking. So that's where all that happened, and here we are. All right, so let's start with sharing kind of the highlights, if you will. Share the highlights of your political journey that led to the wedding industry, because there's something about sharing behind the scenes of working in politics again that I find intriguing. So yeah, go ahead, let us know what happened, you two.
Well, I had started in politics in 2007, and I had been working in advertising for a long time. I had decided to become a teacher for some years because I needed cheaper health insurance, and at the time it was easy to get it that way. And I was a night person. I figured I'll do my work at night still and keep my advertising freelance clients going. I was doing marketing consulting and business consulting, and I'll teach during the day and work at night on the advertising stuff, and that was fine for a little bit until you realized how hard teachers work and how tired you are at the end of the day and how much grading you have to do. And so I had decided to get back into advertising full time, and but this time I decided to do political advertising. It was something that had interested me. I had been teaching politics, government and politics at the time the largest high school in the country, and I was teaching AP government. And so I thought I could apply my skills well to that arena. Some of the stuff I had seen locally was so terrible that and there wasn't a whole lot of internet advertising in politics at the time. So so I decided to leave teaching. I got a set of business cards and it just so happened that the big national conference for the political industry was in Miami, and that year, and I was living in Fort Lauderdale, and I drove down, and I actually wound up with one of the first people I met at this conference was Nicole. About 10 minutes into being there, I wound up bumping into her, and it was a long time later that we wound up together and later married. But I wound up meeting so many of the people that became very helpful to my career, and it just kind of exploded. I lucked into a very successful client, in part because somebody had kept me and this other guy in a waiting room. He was one of those people that likes to, leave people waiting, right? And so the waiting room got stacked up, and I happened to bump into somebody that I knew like 10 years prior in a different way. And that person was working for a congressman, and next thing you know, I was working for that congressman's campaign and doing consulting for them. And I just lucked out, and we had a very early success in my career, and that launched me. And then a couple of years later, Nicole and her former boss, Undine, needed some help with a project and for a Texas governor's race, and they called upon me, and it was that was the beginning of our friendship, and much later on, I can't remember what year we started working together, where you started doing media buying for us, but as things progressed, we wound up merging our efforts and working together as part of the company that called Impact Politics.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, you two have quite a history together. I mean, you've been,
Oh yeah,
this is not the first time you've been working together.
yeah. And in fact, she lived in LA. She had two kids from a previous marriage. I had one child from my previous marriage in Florida, and because we were able to work remotely, I was able to go back and forth. Mostly I flew, but sometimes she did. But I was able to go back and forth pretty much every week from either Florida to California and back. And Richard Branson actually wrote a little blog about us once, because it could only have happened. This romance could only have happened with Virgin America's fleet-wide Wi-Fi and their direct flight from Fort Lauderdale to California.
God, that's
Back
funny.
in the early days, so of fleet-wide Wi-Fi. So it was kind of funny, but
But
yeah. So
Yeah, that's how he talked me into even considering this.
so
I'm a
you
pretty
were,
good salesperson.
oh yeah, right. So you were, Brian, in Florida, and Nicole, you were in California
Yeah.
when you first met.
Yes,
So you had this long distance thing going on for a little bit.
for a long
9
time.
years.
Long
9 years.
time.
Yeah, about 9
Okay.
years. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Which let's talk about that in one of the other questions. But okay, Nicole, was there anything you want to add to this? How all this happened?
No, like he said, I mean, I fell into politics very differently. I was working in advertising, and my former boss, I was working for her husband, and they had to lay me off. And when he did, he said, "I have good news, bad news. I have to let you go. The good news is my wife is looking for somebody. She works in politics." And that's how I landed in politics. And that is like what, 20 20 years I did that. So
20 years,
yeah.
That was the firm that you worked at?
Yes. Well, and then going out on my own.
Gotcha. Okay.
So joining his political company.
Wonderful. So now take us to then, okay, what, 20 some odd years, right? And now it's like, time for a change.
Yeah, the
Get
problem
out of this.
well, part of the problem, we were very lucky to be very successful in the political consulting arenas, and it was fun doing what we were doing for a long time. But I think around about 2015, it started to become less fun, as I think the culture of politics had changed, and whatever side you're on in politics, as it became more divisive, and as more and more people were able to make up things without a whole lot of accountability to the media or to the other side, then it just changed the game a bit. I think also the other issue is that it's a very high intensity job, and it has very big highs and very big lows. You have a very, most of our income would happen in a 6-month period at the end of a 2-year cycle. And then you'd have to kind of budget yourself, and that you never really knew if you were going to be, what your next year was going to look like, or your next cycle was going to look like. So I think after doing that for a long time, both of us had started to think about, well, what can we do that would be scalable, that would be something that isn't as centered on us specifically and the relationships that we specifically developed, but maybe more about the business and less about us as people.
Yeah.
And so what traditionally has made it very difficult, because you build these relationships, and then of course you have to then hire people that are just that can fill those roles as you grow, and that's not an easy thing to do often. But so we started looking at different ideas. I had come up with a couple of interesting but ultimately not particularly successful ideas. One relating to the marketing of psychological research to consumer psychology to the political arena, and that failed miserably. And then another idea that related to cybersecurity training for political campaigns, and that had more legs. And we messed with that for 2 or 3 years. COVID then really knocked the legs out of that one. I think I didn't want to start over, and we realized that was one of those subjects. Cybersecurity is one of those subjects where it's like taking people to the dentist. They'll go if they have to go, but they don't really want to face a lot of that the hassle, unless there's a big issue, right? So it was there was a lot of friction involved in the sales process. So I was just I was still looking for other things. That coincided with having a couple of particularly difficult clients, and really forcing my hand. Like, I've got to do something differently with this. Got to find a way out of this, because I'm not going to be able to do this for another 10 years. And I had started to look at my skill set, specifically Nicole's a wonderful person in terms of operations and whatnot, and she could work for any company. But I'm not. I have my own way of being, and I knew that I had to do something that kind of fit this one particular mold, and so I started looking at my skill sets, and speech writing was one of the things that I was good at. And like, as you mentioned at the top of this, I had been asked to perform some weddings. I had been asked to help some people with the writing of their speeches and other aspects. And so at the same time, I started my own podcast. Like, I had a pandemic podcast, as so many people did, and where I was interviewing various people that had been successful that I happened to know, and an ambassador, various professional musicians and whatnot. And one of the guys that I interviewed was also a political consultant, but he had dipped into the entertainment industry, was a writer for The Tonight Show for 17 years. His name is John Max. And John does ghost writing for comedians like Chris Rock and Steve Martin, and like he writes jokes for he oversees writing for the Oscars and Grammys, I think. And so we were talking about speech writing, and it just something clicked in me, and I started to look at the wedding industry and wedding speeches, because I thought that could be a source of income, something I could do remotely, because I know we like to travel. And then I went on to Clubhouse for the first time. And Club, for those people that aren't familiar with it, Clubhouse happens to be an app where they're like audio conference rooms that you can dip in and out of, and they're moderated. And during the pandemic, when the wedding professionals couldn't work, they all seemed to gather in Clubhouse and talked about their situation, talked about how to better their business once things come back online. So I went into one of the rooms, and I just asked the question, hey, what do you think about the idea of somebody helping people with their wedding speeches? And the moderators and the people on stage were like, yes, and add custom vows and add ceremony scripts for people that are amateur officiants, the internet ordained officiants. And I thanked them, and then and while the rest of the room went on, I went on GoDaddy and I grabbed vowsandspeeches.com. We have a wonderful designer named Brad Joyner that works for us, and Brad made a logo in like an hour and a half. And by the end of the day, 3 hours later, I had a fully functioning Squarespace website, and I had this kind of laid out. And I don't even know if we talked about it.
I'm pretty sure
you
not.
did it. Nicole had no idea you were doing it.
And then I put up some Google ads, and then the next day, I picked up a client. I think that's when we talked about it. I was like, somebody bid on the Google ad, and I got my first client the next day, and I'm like, okay, there's something to this. But of course, we still had our normal business, and we still had other things in our lives, and so it took a little bit of experimenting and figuring out the messaging and we knew nothing about the wedding business. I mean, nothing about the wedding business. Other than that we had been married 5 years prior, and knew how to spend money paying them, but that was it. And and she was I do remember talking to her about it and giving her a bunch of stats, and like, there's 2 million weddings in a year, and if we just got a percentage, and we charged this, because she's big on the math, she does the books, right? So
somebody has to. So here I thought, okay, here we go again. What's this idea?
What
are we doing?
We'd already had 2 flops, and so that later on, as we started to figure this out, and she had been overhearing some of the conversations I was having. I started marketing to wedding planners, because they got it. They understood the problem. and they understood why things went wrong and how they could be made better as part of the wedding by just improving the content. And we spend a lot of time on optics, and so we don't spend a lot of time on the content. They're usually left without any guidance and left up to chance, and that's when a lot of things go wrong. So she had started to hear some of the conversations on speaker and got a sense of what the kinds of reactions were from a temperature standpoint, and they were very excited. A lot of people were very excited. There had been other people and there are a few other people that have kind of poked at this or have done it at a very small scale. But I think I saw this thing as something a little bit bigger than one. I mean, the whole design was to do something that didn't depend on one person, right? That was something that could be scalable. And so we go to Wedding MBA, which is one of the larger wedding conferences out there, and we just walked around. We had our business cards and we were talking to people, and she got to see firsthand, like,
the excitement.
And people's eyes were opening up, and also nobody had heard of anybody else doing this, and with respect to the people that are doing this, it's just not something that had been established as a niche. Right. And so we go there and we got this big reaction, and we're walking out, and this, I keep telling this line, but she looks at me and she goes, you've had a lot of cockamamie ideas in the past, but this isn't one of them. and I look at it, and of course I'm like, yes, because she's, I don't know if you could tell this, but I get a little excited, and so I said, okay, well, we were about to go to dinner. I'm like, we got to talk about what this means. What does it mean to move forward with this? And we had this great dinner, and we're like, we're going to have to take a swing at this. We have to. It's too, it's undeniable that we have to do this. And and that was about a year and a half ago, maybe a year and 3 months ago or so, and it's done nothing but grow since then. And I mean, we're learning a lot. There's still, you can't just jump into this stuff and assume, and this goes with any business. You can't really just assume that it's going to go on the timeline you want it to go to be on, right? So it's taken a lot of investment of time and money and a lot of incredible amounts of networking and discussions and research and I mean, even things as simple as finding the right CRM, but we're doing it.
And what we've found is the wedding industry is so welcoming and helpful, and we have just been we were surprised, overwhelmed by how nice this industry is and how they want to help you, what they want to see you grow, and giving us tips and leads, and everybody is wonderful.
And they're excited and we're excited, and it's been, you talk about joy, and I think this is so much fun, and it's so, to go from something like politics to love, by just the difference in what we're focusing on is such a relief, so
isn't it?
It
really
so
is.
we're 50, and I don't want to retire. I don't want to, I mean, I do, but I don't want to retire until this is done. It's like I feel like this is something that's been invigorating. Whereas our previous endeavors have often been soul sucking.
I get that. I totally get that. And definitely many of us have experienced those types of things. I agree with you, Nicole, when you were mentioning, the wedding industry, because it's a collaborative industry. It takes literally a team to make a wedding. And so everywhere you go, which is one of the reasons I was attracted to it, in my first go around, I actually was asked to do a speaking engagement for an association. It was like a club on Sunset, and it was for they're now no longer, but they needed a speaker. And so my girlfriend, who was a wedding photographer at the time, she says, would you, speak your personal branding stuff to us? I said, sure. And so similar to you, as I started to get to know people, and I actually had, right from that engagement, had people signing up for a coaching program. I thought, oh my God, you guys are so nice. you're so nice and so collaborative, because everybody hires each other, right?
Yeah.
Is supporting each other, because it takes a village to make it happen.
And it is, and, and I don't want to like disparage the people that we work with in politics, because we have had and made some incredible friends in politics, people that have been wonderful partners, and campaigns don't happen without a similar kind of collaboration.
Yeah.
But the very nature of what you do as part of those campaigns is the problem, right? It's not the people we work with are great. The people that hire us are often great. The candidates, some of them are wonderful.
It's the premise.
Some of them are beautiful people, but
it's okay, Ryan. You can be truthful about this. Come on, no one thinks politics is roses. So we all know, which is another reason why I wanted to have this kind of transparent conversation. It's like, of course, oh my gosh, we have to have politics in our country, but we also know there's a lot of negative about it, right? So I hear you. I mean, going from politics to weddings, huge leap, huge difference. Just
they're similar more than there's a lot of similarities in the sense that they're both, you prepare for these moments that occur at a specific point in time, right? Like the campaign has an election date, you have your wedding date, and everything, kind of leads up to that moment. I think the difference is that there are a hell of a lot more weddings going on, and you need this ecosystem of very professional people working together at the highest of levels to do it. And campaigns are often done on shoestrings that are just stressed to the max, and so it's just a different level of stress involved. And one, in our part of the wedding, we often work with people that are stressed at the last minute. They're worried about doing these things, but they're always so thankful, because all we're doing is making it easier for them, right?
Absolutely.
We're not tied to the outcome. They're going to be fine, like it's going to be better, and they're going to be fine, and they're still getting married, they're still going to be winners at the end of the day. So.
Sure. Do you have a fun, quick story to share about a client, of how you helped them with their vows or their speech or anything that
I
so far that's
we have a number of them, but I think some of them involve just helping people at the very last minute. We have a client that's now hired us for multiple things, named Rachel, who called us on Friday. Sorry, thank you. Called us on a Friday before her Sunday wedding. And she was, and this is a person that built a giant business in the past. I mean, she's a professional, very well-spoken person, but she was just, it's hard to write about something that's that close to you. And a lot of people put this off, and then suddenly it's time. And so she called us on a Friday, and we did the interview Friday night. I got her a draft Saturday morning. We practiced it Saturday afternoon, practiced it again Sunday morning, and then she had her wedding, right? And she was absolutely like incredibly grateful. I think the other example is we had
and she had a standing ovation.
Yeah, she got
nice. Okay. That's important.
And then the other example was we had a client who had hired an officiant, and we were doing the officiant script with him, and he was terrified of public speaking, absolutely terrified. Had no idea why they picked him, froze up when it was time to rehearse, and we were able to work with him and the couple and get him comfortable, and then he pulled it off without a hitch. But he was, I mean, when I say like he couldn't even get out the first 3 words, right? So it's those moments like that where you know that you're doing good, right? You know you're doing good. So it's fun. It's fun.
100%. Oh, that's terrific. So what's the usual lead time for people to hire you? There was an example of kind of last minute, but what is the usual lead time that you find?
It seems almost,
It varies
yeah,
so much.
yeah.
Does it?
I don't, some
Yeah.
some of them, I would say that we get 50% of our business is probably people that are within 2 weeks or less.
Okay.
And then the other 50% are people that are like 8 months out, right? Or 9 months out. I have a couple of clients right now where the weddings aren't until December, like the end of November, December. And that gives them so much time to sit on it, rehearse it, get comfortable with material.
Right.
And it's so much better when they do that because the stress is off. They will be that much better off because they've practiced it.
Yeah.
But we get a lot of panic buyers. We really get a lot of panic buyers, and that's fine.
That's great. Well, thank goodness though. I mean, that's a real decent problem to solve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've got a team of people that we, when we get a rush in, we can pull in other writers and other interviewers and that sort of thing.
That's great. Like I said, it's a very unique, niche that, having worked myself for 9 years with planners and all the vendors and knowing, obviously their business, how it runs, their lead times, all the details of a wedding business. Like, when do you hire the writer? When do you hire this, the service that you have? So that makes sense that it really is kind of all over the place, ideally, and it makes sense to me as well. Ideally, it would be great to hire you obviously 6 to 8 months out. So that there is time to,
and also so that you can budget. You may look at your wedding party and say, there's 3 out of the 4 people here are either not comfortable speakers or they're wild cards that might get, hammered and say something inappropriate.
Or they're too comfortable.
Or they're too comfortable.
Exactly.
Or they're too comfortable as speakers. And I think if you look early enough in the wedding and you ask those questions, who's going to be the problem person? They might identify multiple people, and then you want to have the conversation. Okay, do we pull a little bit out of this part of it? Do we make it, maybe have a couple fewer bouquets or something like, just to pay for making sure that this very important part of the wedding doesn't go awry.
It definitely gets overlooked a lot.
Yeah.
When they're planning the wedding, that's not the first thing somebody's going to think about.
And that's why I'm saying that's why I found this unique. And I wanted more people to know about you guys, know about what you're doing, because I don't think people are thinking about that in the beginning of their wedding planning.
They're not thinking about it, and that's really a big part of why we need to go through wedding planners, and this is a B2B2C company right now more than anything, because people idealize their own wedding. They're not remembering that they've been to weddings that are just where the wedding speeches are just terminally boring, or someone said something inappropriate.
Terminally boring.
Or the ceremony in the hot sun. Everybody's sweating and in their suits, and you're hearing the exact same ceremony you've heard a million times, and you're not hearing anything about the couple individually. And so, I think people think that everything's going to go perfectly, and anybody that has any experience in any kind of event knows that doesn't often happen. And so you want to remind people to be realistic in their expectations, and think about the things that could go wrong, so that you can mitigate them ahead of time. Rather than be eternally optimistic, right?
Absolutely.
And that's true for business too. I mean, that's something that you go into this very excited about the potential, and if you're someone like me, you get very excited about these things, and you need that excitement to carry you over the threshold of the fears that you have. But at the same time, if you have any experience in business or starting a business or running a business, that that is not going, it's not going to work that way, right? There are going to be storms, there are going to, there are going to be accidents, there's going to be mistakes, and
Yes.
and people, things will
Yep.
ebb and flow, and if you treat you if you treat it with that expectation, then you will have much more fun, because you won't be like just
Right.
shocked by how slow it's going,
Yeah.
right? Or that you ran into a speed bump, like a global pandemic,
Mhm.
right?
Hence
So
the reason why I started this podcast out with the topic of success, and that
yeah,
as long as you're able to embrace the truth about success, that you're going to have failures, you're going to have hiccups, you're going to have, challenges and all of that, it makes the ride, if you will, not as challenging, because you're setting yourself up for the reality of what that success looks like. So you just gave a
yeah,
good example of that. Yeah, good, awesome. Okay, so follow your joy theme is, in my eyes, the reason that I named it that is, it's following your joy is a life and a business strategy. It's not just a feeling good thing. And what I mean by that is listening to, what is joyful. In other words, I mean, you have things throughout what you've just shared, you've woven in a lot of the stuff about joy. It's like, we got to follow something a little more joyful here. But it's really an important piece to our lives. It's a clue. Keep doing what brings you joy.
yeah,
Why would you choose something that's not? I mean,
yeah.
essentially, that's it. All right. So, given that, and as well intuition, so talk about what brings you, both of you, joy in what you're doing in your business.
Well, I would say, going from the previous business to this, it's very different. I think, you're talking to people who are excited to plan something, and there's budgets, of course, just like in politics, and but it's just a completely different situation. You've got two people wanting to spread love and their excitement. We feed off of that, and that's it's just a completely different animal when we're talking about that. And
Yeah.
again, I'm not at all bashing the previous, but it's oftentimes trying to fight with this person or this vendor, and getting the budget and and just trying to get stuff done in a rush, and so
Yeah.
it's very different. And I
That's
just I think it's the excitement of just weddings, and we love weddings too.
Yeah.
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 Well, it's what many of my other guests in the wedding industry, I mean, they basically say we're in the business of joy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's essentially it, weddings, aside from the usual stress and so forth that comes along with it. But essentially, you're in the business of joy. So go ahead, Brian. What's your take on?
Well, I agree, very much with what she said. I feel the same about that. I think for me also, I I get a lot of joy in building something,
Mhm.
and I think the idea of whether we're first or third or whatever, it doesn't really matter, but the idea of building a niche, uh, independently or collaboratively, that has not existed, and that pretty much everybody we talk to thinks should exist. And being a part of that, and building a business. I've always enjoyed the idea of building a business, and creating something new. I really enjoy when back 25 years ago, when I was doing startup consulting, that was exciting. You had these different ideas, and some of them were crazy and some of them weren't, but trying to figure out how to strategically launch something, or to grow something, is exciting. It's marketing can be really fun, and I used to love it. With advertising, I used to love being a copywriter. We'd sit in these rooms and figure out how do we come up with that right tagline that's going to make this product different or stand out, or that one image that's going to change something for this business, and or the right decision the right call, and that can be stressful sometimes, but when you get it right, there's a lot of joy that comes with it. And I'm generally someone that very much enjoys not working. I, I really do.
We get joy out of weekends.
Yeah, we value our weekends, and we definitely, when the day is over, we value that, right?
Wonderful.
But
One more thing I think that we both get a lot of joy out of is
Mhm.
when somebody's happy with their whatever they're doing at the wedding or the vows or
Yeah.
the speech, and they're
Oh, yeah.
excited, and it's coming up, and we've practiced, and
that text message or that
or
call,
that we
Yeah.
have cried watching the reel of a
yeah. The feedback is
Yeah.
it brings us a tremendous amount of joy.
Yeah.
It's like I imagine I cannot cook worth a damn, but I imagine if I was a chef and I opened up a restaurant, and when you see those people smiling at the meal that you made,
That's it.
and or see those first Yelp reviews, those are those moments are gold.
Yeah. Well, it's something you've created. I mean, writing is an art. It's an artistic, endeavor. So yeah, when somebody's validating and then creating a result from your artistic, talent, it's really awesome.
Yeah.
Sure.
You're in my previous life, I was a musician. I did a little work professionally, and you want that validation. I mean, you want, when you put out a song, you want that, you want the great review, you want the adoration for what you do. I think it's different now because it's similar in that case, but it's different in the sense that we're just happy that they're happy. It's not, it's not strategically, it helps, it's helpful to our goals, but it's not, you get a certain number of testimonials, and you're only putting so many on your site. But when you get that client that was nervous and they call you the next, or the day after the wedding, or you get that text and they're just, oh my God, it was everybody loved it.
Thank God I had that speech
it's
ready.
like,
Yeah.
right.
Exactly.
That's why we're doing it. Good.
Well, and my take on that from a business coach is about creating value, right? In other words, as I'm talking with my clients, it's like, let's really take a look at what's the value that you're creating for your clients. That's how you get paid. Right?
Yeah.
That's how you grow, is the value. And so that's what I'm hearing, from what your answers are, is, that value is exactly what you just explained. So,
and people there are people that have an inflated sense of value,
right,
and there are people that have a deflated sense of value, and and trying to determine the value of your, whether it's if you're a wedding planner, whether it's the value of your month of package, or if you're in another business, just the value of your product, and what, how much are people really going to value this or pay for this. That's a very nervous conversation to have with yourself in a business owner. Like, you don't want to step too far and think that you're that great, but at the same time you could err the other way, and finding the right value to whatever it is that you're bringing is really tough. It's probably one of the bigger struggles we had early on. It's like, okay, well, are we pricing this right? Are we overestimating our forecasts?
Right.
Are people really liking it, or are they just smiling at us and telling us what we want to hear? That you don't know that until you're deeper into it.
Yeah. I mean, I take the bigger picture perspective. It's not so much the specific number value for the value they get.
Yeah.
More about how it changes lives. So what's the value for that, how it's enhancing somebody's life?
Yeah.
Right? Whether it's short-term, long-term, whatever it happens to be, the service or the product. But it's really about how far of an impact are you making on somebody's life.
Or
that's what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, like I asked Nicole, it's like, what do you think the value is of us really loving what we do versus not really loving what we do. Like, how much is that worth to you? You know,
Yeah.
it's not monetarily, but just,
Absolutely.
there's a lot you should give up to have your day be spent at a stress level and an enjoyment level that's appropriate for you.
Yeah.
And people say, you hear people say that all the time,
Mhm.
but it's when you do make those jumps, and I've done this a few times, and she has too, like, when you've made those jumps to make yourself happy at the expense of your lifestyle or at the expense of your previous career or whatever it might be, it's scary. But like, when you're on the other side of it, you go, oh, God, so thankful that happened that way.
Well, that's follow your joy.
Yeah.
I mean, what
Which
you
is why we're appropriate guests.
exactly. I mean, that's why I've chosen that. It's not only the platform for this, but it's also what I coach. What you've just said, I 100%, validate and understand. I mean, you get a choice in life. Nobody's telling you have to suffer.
Yeah.
That's
And
not a
look,
prerequisite of success. It's just, it's in other words, yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
I was just gonna say, I've listened to people talk to this sometimes, and especially when I was in a job I didn't like,
Mhm.
and I bristled, right? Like, I was like, you don't understand. It's not that easy.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
and not everybody is ready for that, and that's why they need coaching sometimes to get through those mental barriers. And
Oh,
luckily,
yeah.
luckily we've worked a long time together. We've worked longer than we've been together, and we understand each other's, like, balance. We understand the balance of our mentalities.
Yeah. Mhm.
I'm going to be the one that jumps first. She's going to be the one that makes sure I have a life jacket with me. Like she's,
Yeah.
there,
Sometimes I have to play
yeah,
bad cop.
right, yeah,
Yeah, sure.
and
Of course.
sometimes I have to drag her into the light,
Yeah.
right? And so we're lucky in that we have that relationship that's complementary. That doesn't always make it easy, but it has worked, and it's worked for us well. And I think she's taught me to be a little bit more conservative about
More
how
grounded.
a little bit more grounded,
Yeah.
and I think I've taught her how to jump a little quicker.
Yeah, have a little more fun, be a little more
Yeah.
spontaneous, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
and so I think finding your joy also involves finding the right people around you, that whether it's a coach or a partner or a life partner or all of the above, that is able to kind of cultivate the joy that you want to have.
Yeah. Very, very good. So would you say that right there, kind of in closing, you think that's part of the secret of your success working together? Is this yin and yang, this balance, this your
Yeah.
strength, my
Yeah,
weakness,
because
my
absolutely, I would. There's no way I would have. I'm the kind of person, I have a lot of ideas, but I also get very neurotic about making decisions sometimes, right? And I need to check off those decisions with somebody, whether it's a friend or my wife is also my friend. But I think that has been the secret, is that we're perfectly balanced for the kinds of environments that we've been operating in.
Yeah, I totally see that. Yeah, it's really, I mean, and that's in relationships, the old saying, it's like, you attract what is the opposite, right? Yeah, that's how the yin and yang works. Can you imagine? There are times I've had this over the years.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you imagine being in a relationship with someone that's just like you? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, it would be awful.
Well, it's funny because now we're kind of melding into the same. Like, in a lot of ways, we're melding into the same person. She's taking on a lot more sales, even though you started in sales. Like, she's become very adept at selling this stuff, and I'm obviously the one that talks a lot more, but but I have, now I'm starting to kind of let loose and let the reins go a bit on part. So
I love
and
it.
it's been working out. So we're kind of we're becoming less opposite as time goes on, which is good.
And how long have you been married?
6 years this year.
6
Yeah.
years. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And you had a 9-year relationship before that.
No, we actually got married while we were still long distance. So we're together probably about 11 or 12 years, something like that.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So in closing, let's have you share kind of a quick, kind of based on your experience, what of many, I know you have many, but what key advice do you have for our creatives? Because I, specialize in creatives. But yeah, what kind of advice do you have? One special golden nugget.
I think I'm going to repeat something that a friend of ours recently told us. We were having a challenging moment, and he said, "Good news, even little bits, can make you feel superhuman." And I think it's, I think attach yourself to the good news, balance your life, but let look for the light, look for the thing that you want to manifest. And that doesn't mean it will manifest, but it definitely means you should focus on that part of it. Focus on, and if you do that, I think you'll have a much better and you work hard and you do your job, I think you'll have a much better shot at it than letting all of the things that are stopping you stop you.
Right. I love that. Are you in agreement, Nicole?
I'm in agreement with that.
Okay.
Well said.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add to that?
No, I mean, I would say keep at it. It's hard in the beginning. It can be. So don't give up. I mean, we've been
Get advice.
Get advice.
Yeah. Thank you.
Talk to the experts. I think people
That's
come in they think that because they have something new or they're new to something, they have to prove how much they know. And I think the one thing that really has helped us is going in and saying, look, we're new to this industry. Tell us everything you can tell us.
Yeah.
Help us understand how this works. Help us understand, things so that we can, if you like the idea, and people have been very, very generous, and usually are about giving advice and help. And that's, if you leave yourself open to that and you make an appointment with the experts. And we did this even in politics. So my first month in politics, I sat down with like one of the biggest guys in politics at the time, political consulting, and he spent an hour just giving me information just because he was one to help, right? So people, if you give the experts the opportunity to pass that along, I think they'll gladly do it.
Yeah, agreed. Totally agreed. All right. So where can our listeners find you?
Sure. Yeah. Vows and Speeches, A-N-D, vowsandspeeches.com, or on Instagram, Vows and Speeches. Look up Vows and Speeches or Brian Franklin, or if worst case scenario, you can't find us, send an email to Marla and she'll pass it on.
That's good. I love it. And I'll have that in the show notes.
Perfect.
All right. Terrific. Well, the two of you, thank you so much, of course.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yep, nice, lively conversation as I expected. So, okay. All right. So I aspire for you, creative, to, keep going in the face of adversity, right? Until you need to either take a sharp left or right turn. Listen to your intuition, listen to that gut, and follow your joy, because that vibe is trying to tell you something. You heard that from Brian and Nicole. And, pay attention and then take some action on that joy. Yeah? All right. We will reconnect in our next episode. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening in. You can find more entrepreneurial stories and resources at marladiane.com. And while you're there, enjoy my 3 free downloads to up-level your business and your life. How about you take a screenshot of this episode and tag me on Instagram by sharing your highlights of what you learned today? I'd love to connect there with you. Until next episode, take care.